Gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Subramaniam Swamy. Sir, we are extremely eager to listen to you speak.
Thank you, Mr. Das. Ladies and gentlemen, I am particularly thankful to young Indians to give me this opportunity, for having given me this opportunity to address on a topic which is going to be an issue in the coming election. The question of governance is essentially a late 20th century subject for intellectual discourse. Earlier on it was government, and government meant law and order. And that law and order could be either in a democratic framework or in a framework where the government owned everything, which is the authority and system of government. But over the years, so many other new criteria came to be considered as important, not only law and order, economic growth, quality of life index, corruption, terrorism. So it became a very large area for a government to perform in, not in one or two areas. And that's how this whole subject of governance has developed. Essentially, governance means resolving conflicting demands. And in the Indian context, present Indian context, I would say it means how to resolve the norm of minimal government with the multi-dimensional tasks that governments have to perform for a stable society. So everything is free but subject to reasonable restrictions, and how those restrictions are to be enforced, and how that freedom, precious freedom to do what you want, is also preserved within that framework. This is the essential underpinning of governance. Now, clearly, in a democratic framework, governance has to be with the consent of the people. And the consent of the people is formally obtained once in 5 years in an election, unless one is held before its time. And then, having obtained that, from time to time, respond to the demands of the public. Now, today, we have a very extraordinary situation where there is despair in the country. Where are we headed for? Every day, the rupee value vis-a-vis the dollar is going down, and nobody seems to have a clue how far down it will go. When it was 50, the rate in the Hawala market was 55. Today it is 65, and the rate in the Hawala market is 75. I'm sure that when we reach 75, the Hawala rate market will probably go to 85. And therein hangs a very important tale, which requires the best brains on governance to deal with. Why is the Hawala rate continuing to rise? It's because the money that is being made through corrupt deals is being converted into foreign exchange, and it is done through the Hawala market with impunity. Everybody knows who the Hawala agents are. The law enforcement agencies know. But the money is mostly of those who are in power. A few who are in good terms with the ruling party, also in the opposition. They also have some of that being laundered. And therefore, in the simple law of demand and supply, rupee value is going to go down, because money is being converted into dollars, and therefore the dollar rate is going up. We also had certain financial instruments which are derivatives, which is unprecedented anywhere else in the world. And that is the instrument of participatory notes, which the Tarapura committee stoutly opposed, which many of us have been opposing for a long time, which has become an instrument of converting illegally obtained dollars, that is through your hawala, deposited abroad, and returning to India in the form of a derivative called participatory notes. I say it's unprecedented because no other country has such an instrument. All you have to do is to put cash in the counters of US Fidelity Investments or Morgan Stanley and get a piece of paper without name or even date or even serial number, but only the amount in it. You bring it to India, you get it legitimized, the entry legitimized through the Reserve Bank, and then use it almost like currency for investments in the country. So you have participatory notes, essentially. The money goes out, then comes back, and then it is freely tradable in the stock market. Normally, if you trade in the stock market, you have to explain to the SEBI where you got the money from. But for participatory notes, it's been conveniently exempted from SEBI questioning. It is, except for informing the Reserve Bank that you're bringing it in, and your ownership is secret, and it can, like currency, go from one hand to another. Nobody will know who the original owner was. And then it goes to the stock market. The stock market shoots up in prices. You sell at the height. The money that you get, you are entitled to officially through the Reserve Bank, convert into foreign exchange and you can take it away. There was only one problem that under Indian tax laws, if you make capital gains, you have to pay 30% as tax. But that also was taken care of later by stating that if you came via Mauritius, then because Mauritius is a poor country of Indian indentured labor, therefore any investment coming through a Mauritius company is exempt from capital gains tax. And in Mauritius, you can always start a company with $1. I found this when I was investigating the 2G spectrum scam, that all the companies which were involved in the bribery were people having an address in Mauritius. Not only an address in Mauritius, but in the same street in Mauritius. Not only in the same street, but in the same building. Not only in the same building, but in the same room. And that room was unfurnished and under lock and key. So it was just a kind of a postal address for purposes of getting away here. So the issue now is so gigantic for governance. $1.5 trillion, that is my estimate. The American Global Finance Integrity Committee in Washington, they have estimated $0.5 trillion. But $1.5 trillion is in illegal bank accounts abroad. In about 70 countries, you have illegal banking. And this money is enough to finance several 5-year plans of our country. You can find that in comparison, your central budget, the total tax bill is 4.5 lakh crores, which in the present thing would be about less than divided by 6, you get about say $60 billion. So $1.5 trillion on one side and $60 billion. You can have a tax holiday for a long period if you can get that $1.5 trillion. There are ways of doing it. And the question is, can it be done? If someone wanted to bring back this money and I have verified this with the best legal brains in the country, whom I personally know, you can get all this money back thanks to a resolution of the United Nations in 2005 by just bringing out an ordinance. I say ordinance because you don't need for at least 6 months, you don't need a parliamentary vote for it. You bring out an ordinance saying that all bank accounts of all Indians, citizens, or holding Indian passport is hereby nationalized, and if any depositor or bank account holder explains to the government convincingly that the money was legitimately obtained, legitimately deposited, then under the UN Convention, countries are obliged to hand over the amount of money in those bank accounts to you. This can be done, but it can't be done if a government consists of people who hold bank accounts abroad. And this we found when the Germans found that some of their officials had illegal bank accounts in Liechtenstein, which is in the neighborhood. So they asked the Liechtenstein government, please give us details of these accounts, because these are illegal accounts, they are our officials, and we need to know. And the Liechtenstein people said, we can't do that because our whole business depends on secrecy. And if we start handing out names, then we'll be out of business. So the Germans didn't give up. What they did is they set aside $500 million to bribe the senior-most executive of the Liechtenstein Bank with a promise of American visa and citizenship later, and plastic surgery so that no one will recognize him afterwards, and obtain the entire list of secret illegal bank holders of Liechtenstein Bank. Then they downloaded the CDs and sorted it out of countries, and it turned out there were 24 countries whose nationals had illegal bank accounts in a small place like Liechtenstein. So they decided to write to 23 countries. The 24th country, of course, was Germany. So they wrote to 23 countries that we have got bank accounts of your nationals, and on a CD, we are ready to send it to you. So 22 countries immediately replied saying, please send it to us. One, there was silence. And that you can guess is India. So some of us had to go to the Supreme Court and get an order that the government must obtain those lists. And it turned out there were 16 names. They have come to the Supreme Court, but the government is still filibustering that this treaty will be broken, that treaty will be opened. It is not yet, the list is not out yet. There are some very big names in that. And I'm sure that a good government in the future can easily get it, because once the government objections go, the Supreme Court would make it public. At the moment it's in sealed covers. Now I'm coming to you to show you what a big problem we have. Today we have a fiscal deficit, center and state combined, over 12% of GDP. That's a really dangerous level. It's the Brazilian or the Latin American level. It's a sure case of an indication of a serious malaise in the system when 12% of your GDP is in fiscal deficit. Then you have a capital account deficit. There is a difference between the payments we receive by exports and of course invisible receipts, etc., and the payment for imports. That difference, that deficit is running today at an unprecedented level of 5.5%. Never in our history till 2009 we had this kind of a capital account deficit. which usually would be 1.5–2%. There was a brief period, 2003, 2004, when we had surplus. But today we have a situation where the capital account deficit is in such a high number, clearly indicating that we are on the verge of a financial crisis. And there are other indications. Where is the money going to come from? How have we been meeting the deficit in the budget all these years? By asking the public sector banks to give loan to the government at low interest. And there we find a new phenomenon. If you go and see the budget documents, you can see it. That we have reached a stage that if the government takes 1 rupee more of loan or commandeers 1 rupee more of loan from the bank, public sector banks, it has to return 96 paisa on that as past loans that have to be returned with interest. That's called amortization. So all you're getting is net of 4 paisa. In another 3 years, if this continues, it will exceed 1 rupee. That is, if you take a loan of 1 rupee, you'll have to pay back more than 1 rupee. And that is called a debt crash. So we have a debt trap today, which is accompanying your fiscal deficit, your capital account deficit, and the inability now in the future to meet the deficit or cover the deficit by new loans from the public sector banks. Now, one can easily say, why doesn't the government prune its expenditure? Well, here I will ask people, what can you prune? Can you prune government salaries? No, not this government anyway. 2, can you prune defense expenditure? Oh, there will be a howl if you did that. Can you prune the subsidy budget? No. Can you prune the interest payments on past loans? No, because then you will have to declare bankruptcy. You can't do that. Can you prune the police bill? Not at the rate the rapes are going up in the country. You'll have to have more police now, not less. There's a law and order problem all over the country. We have a terrorist problem. So these 6–7 items of the budget, which account for 99% of the expenditure of the budget, in the budget, you can't prune. So where is the pruning going to take place? So this is a major governance problem. So I can go on giving you a list of problems, the governance problems, which look almost insoluble. I will say, and I hold the media responsible for what I'm saying. 1990, the Chandrasekhar government came. I, by the way, had 2 stints as minister, not 1. I had one with Chandrasekhar, short-lived, but we did almost everything that governments have not done in 10 years. In 7 months, we brought in a blueprint for economic reform. Thereafter, Narasimha Rao government came. Mr. Narasimha Rao invited me to be a minister of his government, but he put a condition that I had to join Congress. And I said, I'll do anything, but I will not join Congress. So he appointed a commission called the GATT Commission and gave me cabinet rank so that I could attend cabinet meetings. The blueprint he formally asked me to give him, which we had adopted in the cabinet. At that time, my cabinet secretary, my commerce secretary, I was the Minister of Commerce and of Law. My commerce secretary was Mr. Montek Singh. And my economic advisor was Manmohan Singh. He was specially brought in from Geneva, where he had migrated. And he brought him back. And so Narasimha Rao made him the finance minister, then Montek Singh as the finance secretary. And he got hold of the blueprints. I don't claim credit for the economic reform because they gave him the blueprint, because anybody can prepare a blueprint. It is Narasimha Rao's sagacity, ability to get it through, overcome the objections that were being raised. Look at the problem he had. For 40 years we had a Soviet model in our country. Soviet economic model. Now the Soviet economic model didn't produce results. The rate of growth never exceeded 3.5% per year. Communist economists who were the legion in those days, most of them migrated to the United States, so we are now grateful to the United States for these small mercies. They said this is the Hindu rate of growth. It was the Soviet Union model rate of growth. And they put it on the Hindus as usual and said this is the Hindu rate of growth. Now, this Soviet model has failed everywhere in the world. It failed in the Soviet Union also. I remember Namboodiripad, you see, often used to taunt me with this, because the general perception was that I was pro-West, I was pro-capitalist, etc. I've always been for market economy. I've always believed that the government has a regulatory role. You can't have laissez-faire. But then you see, when you're in a political debate, you push the other person to the other extreme. Like including saying that you are a Hindu communist and you are a Hindu nationalist. There's a difference between the two. So I would say that at that time, Namboodiripad would tell me, you know, look at what's happening in the United States. They're having banks are closing down. So there are little crises in America all the time, which they used to overcome. But he said in Soviet Union, there was no inflation. There was no unemployment. There was no poverty. That was the propaganda. And that's the propaganda we were sold. It was not true. Till the Soviet Union disintegrated in 1991. So in 1991 August, I met Namboodiripad. I said, there is no unemployment in Soviet Union. There is no poverty in Soviet Union. There is no inflation in Soviet Union. Now there is no Soviet Union also. It's broken into 16 countries. And then the world came to know what a disaster the Soviet model was, when they compared what happened with East Germany and West Germany. Here is a country, it's almost a laboratory test. They were one country. They were destroyed equally during World War II, and then in 1945 it was partitioned. One accepted democracy and capital and market economy. The other took up dictatorship of the Soviet proletariat, whatever you call that, and the Soviet model. And the difference between East Germany and West Germany is there for everyone to see. The same thing with North Korea and South Korea. The same thing with China before economic reforms and China after the economic reforms. And I would say, obviously we have seen ourselves, what a difference economic reform. All that Narasimha Rao did was, he deregulated and the economy started booming. But his problem was, this is where the governance question comes. When he deregulated, the touts who were living it off, the rental income as it's called, by selling licenses in the black market, quotas, with their access to ministers, they suddenly lost that income. It was instantaneous. Tomorrow if you say you don't need a license, all these people who are selling licenses, who had access to ministers, became useless. And they were all members of the Communist Party, worst part, because that's only where you could get the influence. You became part of the party. Same thing with import quotas. You removed import quotas. You started reducing the duty. So this meant that a lot of people lost money. Now the beneficiaries from that didn't see the benefit coming right away, and the propaganda was tremendous, that this is for capitalists, this is for rich people, the poor people are going to be benefited. And Narasimha Rao, even though he managed to transform the economy and put it on a growth path which went up to 1996 to 8%, lost the election because the people were convinced that he's anti-poor, when it was not so. Therefore, one of the fundamental principles of governance in a democratic country is that you should design your reforms in such a way. You should design your reforms in such a way that some benefits come immediately for the vocal people of India, particularly the middle class, the professional class, and the working class. There must be some immediate benefit. You can't say that after 4 years, filter down, all that, you will get it. It will not sell. And I don't think that it's only a question of Narasimha Rao. Chandrababu Naidu lost for the same reason. He brought reforms so fast, S.M. Krishna in Karnataka. These people lost elections because they were reformers. And therefore, design of an economic reform is the most crucial thing for us today. How do you go about it? Today, if you want to change things, in my opinion, there's a depressed middle class today, feeling despondent about the future. You've got to energize them. And you have to find measures by which they see benefits coming right away. And therefore, I have advocated that a future government, what it ought to do is say that if you save money in recognizable forms like bank deposits, fixed time deposits, or share purchase, equity purchase, debenture purchases, then that entire expenditure will be treated as deduction for income tax purposes. If you think that will cause too much paper problems of maintaining accounts, etc., then I would say go straight and abolish personal income tax for a period of 5 years. That will enthuse the people. In any case, who are the people who are paying income tax? It's not the rich people. They've got chartered accountants to tell them how to fudge accounts. You have seen that the Ambanis have gone on trial in the 2G, which itself is a historic development, and said that I don't remember that I own a company. I don't even know whether my name is Ambani or not. So they have varieties of ways, the rich people, who minimize the tax impact on them. In fact, till 1996, Dhirubhai Ambani never paid income tax. He was not paid. And G.D. Birla paid only, showed his income for all his life at about 18,000 rupees a year. So, the chartered accountants, they don't pay. The poor can't pay because they are not in the tax. This is the middle class, the professional class. These are the people who are paying, and I think the time has come to give them a relief and make them enthusiastic to see changes coming. So the design of economic reforms is going to be one of the crucial factors in governance of our economy. Most of these problems can be solved. I think the rupee slide can be solved if you raid a few Hawala people and put them in jail. You have inflation, which is partly responsible because of wrong policy, the wrong policy being that you have allowed forward trading in food grades, in agricultural products. So people with black money go to the wholesale market, buy it up and store. Take this onion crisis. Onion crisis is totally man-made. It's all forward market operations. This forward market operation should be banned, should be stopped. And we need, therefore, these kinds of changes where the impact is immediate. The government is clueless because they don't want to do these things. They are all involved in these things. They are making money. People say, where is the resources going to come for the projects if you do all this? I'll say, if you had auction spectrum, you would have got 1,76,000 crore rupees as revenue. Instead of that, you lost it. They say, no, that is for cheap tariff. That's what Raja said in court. That is for saying that the tariff is cheap. That's why we gave it at such a low price. The 2001 price for spectrum in 2008, when the market price was 10 times as much. Because in 2001, the number of mobile sets in the country was just 4 crores, and in 2008 it was 70 crores. So therefore, the market had become huge, and the price for spectrum had gone up by 10 times. And you gave it cheap. Who did you give it cheap to? You gave it to two companies, for example, who are real estate companies, who didn't even have a single tower to be called a telecom company. They just named themselves. One of them is Swan, which Mr. Anil Ambani doesn't remember, where he held shares in it, and it was his company. And that has been established beyond doubt. So they were given it. Had they gone into the operation, then maybe there's an argument. But what did they do? They sold it for 8 times the price they paid the government of India to two foreign companies. Swan sold it to Etisalat of Abu Dhabi, and Unitech, which is also a real estate company, sold it for 8 times again to Telenor. So these companies which got the license cheap and sold it at 8 times the price without doing any work made an enormous killing. And of course they could not keep all the money themselves. They had to give politicians to keep them quiet. And so a lot of people got a lot of money. And the Etisalat was explained to by Swan. The Etisalat was told, well, you see, we have to pay politicians, so we have to charge you this high. And the same thing with the Telenor. Well, then I went and filed a petition, and the Supreme Court cancelled the licenses, all 122, which is another unprecedented step. Licenses cancelled. So naturally, these companies got a little mad, said, give us back our money. Politicians were reluctant to give it back, so they said, we'll find you other ways to make money. And one of the airline deals today is to ensure that the loss in the cancellation of the license is made up by some other route through a foreign direct investment arrangement in the airline industry. So I am saying that if you had from the very beginning auctioned the spectrum, you would have got enormous amount of resources. 1,76,000 is the estimate of the CAG. I'm not surprised, it's not a wrong estimate. Kapil Sibal says that it is wrong, loss was 0. I don't blame him because I don't think he learned arithmetic beyond counting 0. So, but you look at it this way, these companies, there were 9 companies which got licenses. They paid that low price of 2001. What was the total revenue that these 9 companies was enabled by the purchase by these 9 companies? It is 9 multiplied by the price in 2001. It works out to about 16,000 crores. 16,000 crores is the revenue government got. Had the government sold it at 10 times the price, which was the market price, then the government would have got 1,60,000 there. It's a very straight arithmetic. And then of course there is the CDMA and all that, you add them all up, you get 1,76,000, seems like a very reasonable estimate. Probably it was more than that, but 1,76,000. Compare this with the subsidy bill, 1.5 lakh crore rupees. Total tax bill, 4.5 lakh crore rupees. If you had auctioned the coal blocks, how much would you have got? 11 lakh crore rupees. If you had auctioned the oil fields that were given free to the Ambanis in Krishna Godavari, etc., you would have got 21 lakh crore rupees. And if you had brought the money back from abroad, $1.5 trillion, which is 70 lakhs or a little more now because the exchange rate has gone up, you would have got 80 lakh crore rupees. There is no shortage of money in India, provided you price the product right. So the governance principle would be that, not the traditional way of increasing taxes, levies, petrol prices. Why are you raising petrol prices? I don't understand. Previously they used to say the Arabs are raising the crude oil prices. Now the Arabs are not raising the crude oil prices. In fact, the crude oil prices have gone down. And if the price of petrol today is 75 rupees per litre, I don't know whether Kochi is a little higher or not, but 75 rupees per litre, of which the cost of production, the cost of delivery to the petrol pump, the commission of the petrol pump people, all included works out to only 31 rupees. The remaining is all tax. So therefore, why are we raising these taxes? These only make transportation expensive, makes life difficult for the middle class. So we have these conflicting demands which have to be resolved. You must raise resources through the proper pricing of your resources, and you must deploy your investment in such a way that you get the maximum return. You need efficiency, and efficiency and rate of return are only possible if there is no corruption. Corruption is huge in India, and it goes from top to bottom. It's no use saying the policeman is corrupt, the postman is corrupt. It's all really, if you can catch a few top people and put them in jail. The process has started. One or two clever ministers have so far escaped, but I don't think they will escape permanently. If I can't get them from the front door, I'll get them from the back door. The process is on. This question of corruption, let me tell you, it has a multi-dimensional effect on our society. It's not a question of somebody getting a contract that he doesn't deserve and some minister making money without working. It's not just that. It has a multi-dimensional effect on our society. First of all, what do you do with the money? Most of them spend it on luxurious projects. Buy land. That's why whether the economy goes up or down, the land market keeps going up. Because it's all black money financed. Land prices shoot up. You buy expensive marble. Marble prices shoot up. You put in every room in your house the most advanced air conditioner. Air conditioner industry booms. You put all these luxurious gadgets in your massive house. This is what happens with the black money. That part which you don't take abroad. And so the prices of these products go up. The prices goes up, along with it, the profitability of these industries go up. And the profitability going up, people do stop investing in what is essential, or what is called as the goods that the ordinary man wants, and shift their investments to luxury goods production. In our country today, 70% of our investments, directly or indirectly, goes to finance luxury goods production. Directly, indirectly means you may produce steel, but that steel is used for producing luxury goods. So this 70%, this in a poor country, which claims to have a large share of poor people, there you have your investment priorities distorted because of corruption. As I told you that your inflation of agricultural products is largely financed by black money and through this forward trading and putting them in cold storage till the prices go up. Your stock market is rigged because of the fact that you have participatory notes coming and wrecking it. And these are hot money. This is called hot money. They can leave any time, and they have recently left. That's part of the problem you are having. So this is the third. Fourth and most dangerous of all is that you cannot do hawala operations except through Dubai. And these hawala operators therefore have to keep people in Dubai very happy. And some of them are very influential people in governments. For example, in Dubai, the ISI has a huge presence. So therefore, the hawala operators have to provide the information on which minister's money is being laundered and being put in which bank account. And I believe that today Pakistan has a complete dossier on all our ministers, those who have illegal bank accounts. I think this is highly dangerous because you can get blackmailed with it, especially if you are portraying yourself as an angel and a saint before the public. A man, a common man who wears only homespun khadi kapda or something like that, and suddenly, you know, front page news item has a bank invoice of a few $1 billion. So there, I think if you can be blackmailed by an intelligence agency of a foreign country, you may not be in a position to fight them also. Or if they do any nasty things to you, you might want to have a subdued reaction. I don't know what it is, but it certainly impacts your national security. And because of participatory notes, there was a national security advisor, Mr. M.K. Nayan, who told a conference in Germany that terrorists today, for their terrorist activities in India, use the participatory notes to generate money for their terrorist activities. That is, our own stock market is financing our the terrorist activities in our country. Of course, Mr. Narayanan was rewarded for his frankness, and he's now been posted as governor of West Bengal, and he's out of the picture completely. So I think you should see the complexity of the governance that you know is required in our country, and that means a modern mind. It means people with modern minds should enter politics, which means this present ethos in our country, which unfortunately emanated from Jawaharlal Nehru's time, that politics is dirty, meant for crooks. Avoid it if you can. Don't have anything to do with it. Except when you have to bribe a politician, don't go near him. So this politics today is starved of talent. And that starvation is at the root of our problems. You want modern governance, you have to have good politicians. You just see comparison to other democracies. Take America. The President of the United States, Obama, was top of the class in the Harvard Law School. He could have made no end of money as a corporate lawyer, but he gave it all up for politics. Even his predecessor, whom many people thought was dumb, was George Bush. He had a master's in business administration from Harvard. Highly educated people considered politics as a profession to be gone into in a country like the United States. In our country, we have highly educated people, but unfortunately they don't have a spine, and therefore they can't stand up. Who can be more educated than the Prime Minister of India today? But can he take any decision? And the question people ask is, why doesn't he take the decision? He's got sitting on the most powerful chair in the country. I tell people that you go to a circus and you will see 5 lions inside a cage. One thin ringmaster will enter that cage and he'll order the lions, climb up. They all climb up on the bench. Then he'll say, open your mouth. And they all open their mouth and he'll put his head turn by turn in each of them. Each of the lions is strong enough to finish this ringmaster. But they obey. Because from early, when they were pups, they've been brought up to obey. So therefore the Prime Minister is also being brought up that way. I've known him for 40 years. He knows how to obey. And there's no use telling him that you have the power to bring change. He can't bring the change. Now it is, at least it's been exposed that he couldn't have got those reforms of the early 1990s. But for Narasimha Rao, these reforms would have come. And coincidentally, by the way, Manmohan Singh's last name is also Lion. Singh is lion. But he's a circus lion, not a real lion. So we have this additional problem in our country. We are risk averters. We don't like risk. We want to play safe. We want stability. I don't think you can get progress if you have this kind of a mental makeup. At the end of my class at Harvard, I used to ask students, because there are students from many nationalities, now that you're going to graduate, what kind of a career would you like? One career could be that you take risk and become a billionaire. Or you could enter a government job, your salary will increase every year by 5%, and at the retirement age you will get a fat provident fund, and you buy a nice house and watch television for the rest of your life. So I used to find the American students would ask me, what's the probability of my taking risk and falling flat and becoming, completely knocked out? Then we can tell you which kind of job you like. But all the Indian students, without exception, used to say they preferred the second job. And I used to say, why? That's guaranteed poverty. Why would you want that? They said, but it is guaranteed. That is why it is important to have a job like that. This psychology we have inherited because of this years of British imperialism and perhaps years of slavery earlier or domination earlier. But we need to change in our young people. You say what young Indians can do, I say adopt a dynamic attitude. To strive, no harm in failure. Get up again and try again. There's no such thing as a straight line to success. So take this attitude. Some of you must think of entering politics. It's not going to be easy because those who have gotten will not allow you easy access. Fight your way through. That is the way, because we today are endowed with the youngest possible population for a large country. 70% below the age of 35, average age of Indian 28, average age of American 38, average age of a European 45, average age of a Japanese 50. These are aging populations. Here is a young population. We must ensure, the government of the future should ensure a world-class university and college system, but you must have a mind for innovation. That means risk, trying something new ways of doing things, not following the beaten path. That kind of psychology, combined with modern approaches to governance, will transform this country within a short period to world power status. Thank you.